Welcome everybody to the LSA's webinar series, and this particular webinar, how to use online seasonal marketing to drive local sales. I'm Greg Sterling, VP of Strategy and Insights for LSA, and I'm very pleased to have with us today Tyler Ludwig from Rio SEO, Director of Product and Strategy, and Carlos, I don't want to mispronounce your last name, Carlos Corredor?
Perfect.
Correct? Okay,
Perfect.
Great, Corredor. Or should I give it the more Espanol, corredor? Would that be right? Would that be correct? No?
Just as
All
good.
right.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Marketing manager for Hallmark Gold Crown. And they're going to be talking about location best practices and the way in which national brands work with local business outlets, local franchisees around event-driven promotions and seasonal marketing. So it's going to be a very interesting discussion. You can ask lots of questions at the end. And before I turn it over to these gentlemen, I'm going to sort of set the stage a little bit with some data. I also want to mention that within about 48 hours, you should get a, there you go. There's the Microsoft update happening. In about 48 hours, you're going to get an email with a link to the archive version of this, so you'll have all the slides and you'll have the audio as well. So to get into it and set the stage a little bit, as many of you on this call already know, the big story in internet marketing is online influence, offline spending, far, far larger than e-commerce. And this is my estimate based on a number of different inputs. I'm estimating that about 10, it's probably even larger, $1 trillion across products and services are influenced by digital media. So people looking online for ratings and reviews, social media search, and so on, all these different things, and then purchasing in stores. So this is a huge, huge, and very important pattern and phenomenon. Next slide, please, Tyler. And as everybody also knows, increasingly mobile is in the mix. We've got all these different devices and people bouncing from channel to channel and device to device as they do research and work their way through a path to purchase. Next slide, please. This is LSA Merck local media tracking data that it represents sort of cumulative research across the entire year 2015. And what it illustrates here is 13 different media channels and the ways in which people use those to find local business information. So what you can see, without going into each data point here in detail, is that people are using lots of different channels, traditional media, online media, etc., to make those purchase decisions, do research prior to offline purchase decision making chiefly. So I believe I have one more slide. Next slide, Tyler. Yeah, so this then represents a big challenge for everybody who's marketing to consumers these days. How to reach consumers at the right time with the right information. This is something everybody on the call and the webinar is quite familiar with. And we're going to get into some more detail now with Tyler and Carlos about how this actually works in practice. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Tyler, to start us off.
Great. Thanks, Greg. Thanks for everybody for joining. Yeah, just to give you a kind of synopsis of kind of what we're going to be talking about today, really around local search and really how you can use seasonal marketing to your benefit. And some things to kind of note is it's different for every vertical, right? Every brand has their different messaging, different channels, different ways that they can actually interact with a local consumer. Also, as Greg mentioned before, is really the overall goal here is, whether you're a brick and mortar store or have the ability to, buy online, buy offline, or it's a mix of both, is really how can you use digital media to drive in-store traffic as well as, either online sales or in-store sales. And that's really the bread and butter of making sure that marketing and your objectives actually align with each other. Thirdly is really around how do you manage that? How do you manage it across thousands or hundreds of locations really effectively? So we want to talk about, really what proper strategy within your organization or with, strategic partners and things like that looks like really to give you the best benefit, in the long term, as, seasonal campaigns change quite frequently. And then the last piece is really around, how can you extend marketing budget to really attack or, reach additional consumers that you might not know of, that might already be loyal to your brand. Really how you can do that across different devices and different mediums within the kind of ecosystem that we call marketing. So just a funny little slide, a quick little thing. As seasons change, people are still doing things. They're still looking for different products and services. So I really want to jump into, some marketing tips to really, make sure that you get the most benefit, especially when you're talking about at scale. So to kick it off, really when we think about it is, local is not a one-size-fits-all. There's no silver bullet. There's no one direction that you can really, put all your eggs in one basket and focus on. So when we try and kick off a campaign or think about marketing in general, is, where is it coming from? What is your strategy across a national campaign versus a local campaign? Because as you know, as most of you know, is that each consumer and each demographic is different. There's different, maybe it's male versus female, different personalization that really goes into an effective marketing campaign, especially when you talk about, Mother's Day that just came around. Focus could be different messaging for fathers or for kids and mothers, really how they can benefit and how you can sell your products or drive your brand message. Another big thing that, we notice a lot with, since we work with, a lot of enterprise brands with hundreds or thousands of locations, is really where is the source of truth for data to push that out. So, and it really starts with your core is, local business information. Are you having, where are you managing all that today? Do you really have, with internal departments, people updating hours, different pieces of content? Really, where does that live so that you can really effectively push it out across the different channels? So that's a major thing to remember, is that you're only as good as your data and only as good as your source of the truth from the brand itself, or else it can get very, awkward or haywire when you try and syndicate it out. And kind of the tail on that is, when you're managing that data, really think about what platforms you use. So there's thousands of different marketing platforms out there. Most of you probably use, 5 or 6 different tools, depending if it's the social team or the digital marketing or maybe the paid search team. Really, how can you bring that into a single platform, if possible, and allow you to leverage it across those different outside third-party vendors or different sources of data that you're pushing out? Maybe it's AdWords. You want to have a single source of truth for all your location information, for local extensions and things like that, really to allow you to push it out and, make it more manageable. We see that with a lot of clients where, data is coming from every which way, but they don't really know which is the source. So making sure that you have a platform that can scale with your business is really the most fundamental piece of this. And that kind of, goes along with, there's different stakeholders, like I mentioned, inside the business, is making sure that your objectives align. If you have different departments that think there's different ways or different mediums that they should be pushing on, making sure that you're collaborating internally to make sure that you get the most benefit in the long term. So to kick it off is, you want to do all this fun marketing stuff, but where are you building your foundation for consumers to interact with your brand? So, the key piece, especially in local, is, you got to have your address information right on different search engines, different directories, because as we know, when people search either on their mobile device or on their desktop, and they look for driving directions and your address is wrong and they go to the wrong store, most likely you're going to lose that consumer, and they're actually going to go to a competitive brand. So that's really your core piece for all marketing, is really making sure that your brand presence is actually up to date and accurate. The next step is, how do you control your brand online? So you own properties like your website, your local landing pages, your place where your consumers really look to gain more insight, more information around your brand. Maybe it's in-store promotions or tying that to a product focus for that campaign. So making sure that the information also matches from the listing, but also to your online business page. And that's going to help you from, authoritative rank, as well as, making sure that backlinks coming from directories all have the same information. So that's really key, is making sure that when you do push your information as a foundation for people coming to your store or even shopping online, is that it's consistent across all of the different sources. If people in your segments, primarily use Yelp or Foursquare or whatever it may be, if addresses are incorrect and, they find it, they're going to be, pretty disappointed and, lose that brand loyalty. And, to kind of tell on that is, once you've kind of built that foundation for your information, is, really use analytics. Analytics is, data is everything for no matter what brand or vertical you're in. Is it really tells you the story of what consumers are targeting your brand or visiting and engaging with your brand. So simple things, even if you use Google Analytics, looking at location by location, or location visits by location, or keywords by location. There's so much rich analytics that you can really build to drive each individual campaign. And that really helps you from looking at maybe previous campaigns and stuff like that, to really see where traffic from those initiatives actually came from, so that you can really push that out and really optimize the campaign going forward. So, foundation's built, got all of our data in the right place. We got to plan early. I can't stress that enough, is, really you cannot do this at a reactive approach. I know most of you probably know this already, but if you're trying to launch a campaign at the last minute, there's a lot more problems that come into that. So making sure that you're at least planning at least 30 to 60 days ahead. And why that's important is because when we talk about the sources of data or sources of information that goes out across the ecosystem, every directory or search engine, it takes some time. There are ones that update automatically. But there are times when, maybe you pushed out holiday hours to, say, Google or Bing, and they go through a review process, and if you did it 2 days before and they don't publish it until 2 days after, you've really lost that ability to attract those consumers, in their moment of need when they're looking for your business information. So making sure that, great marketing calendars in place. I can share one. I'll tweet one out after the webinar around a good one around all the holidays and really where you can start planning. And then, making sure that you have all of the, necessary elements to really push out those campaigns. That's working with your designers for collateral. It's working for, your social media team from the proper messaging, or maybe your agency partner, of how you can optimize ads, before time. Because when you work with large enterprises, there's approval processes and different stakeholders that want to make sure that the message that you're going to be pushing out is really, what it needs to be and finalized before your back is up against the wall to really push it out. So really making sure that you do that, and then track it, over time, to make sure that you can optimize it mid-campaign, or at least, after the campaign's over, really see the true value of ROI. So in-store visits, or, purchases online from the campaign ads and things like that. Really making sure you're evaluating all of those processes when it comes into it. So you're ready to launch, but where do you really want to push this information? So provided a couple examples here of really great ways to of the different mediums, right? So you have, kind of up in the top left is really making sure your local holiday hours, and Google, within their knowledge cards, are really making it really immersive experience where, showing, Christmas Eve hours or holiday hours around a specific event. You do have that ability to provide that information so that when a consumer goes there, they know that the hours could be changed for that business based on the different marketing campaign or the different seasonal event. Make sure it aligns with kind of your social media. So Hallmark did a great push around, Mother's Day. This was on the time of the day, as Mother's Day rolled out, but I'm sure they had preemptive campaigns that pushed out across their different Facebook pages or social media accounts, maybe even down different messages around the store level. Making sure that you personalize each one of those elements to that specific market or that consumer. Other things like, around, e-marketing cards, where you see an example of local ad extensions where you can really, create additional links and create more space within that paid search pack, where you can drive people either to an online to build their e-card, or maybe to a specific store, create a section on the website. And you can kind of see that down below as a snippet from one of the Hallmark's pages around, what can you start doing for, holiday ornaments, early and well before the holiday comes around, to make sure that consumers know that you're thinking about it before. And, that tail ends with, make sure you're pushing it as far and wide as you possible. So your audience lives in different realms of the ecosystem, either through search or through social, or through paid, or maybe even niche directories like Yelp or Foursquare. You have all those facilities and ways to really capture consumers, no matter what type of platform that they're using at that point. And to end it, really the most critical is, when we want to do all this fun campaign marketing for seasonal events, is not making sure that, your data is correct, you're making sure that all of your marketing campaign is set up well in advance, but really is how can you learn from each one? Making sure that when you do submit that information, as an example, to say Google, make sure that you have reporting tools in place so that you can make sure that those holiday hours actually showed up. Make sure that that information that you're pushing out to them, maybe it's a change of a cover image or whatever. Make sure you monitor them to see if those actually go live, so you can either address it if some don't go live or whatnot. And then measuring, you want to make sure that you're measuring each aspect of this. So tracking, what source they came from. Did it actually provide a sale from that campaign? And when we talk about that as a local level, really when you look at, like, say, local landing pages, for example, the easiest way to do that is create a unique coupon code or promotional code around that event that is tied to the, say, local landing pages. And that really gives you insight to see that, we pushed it out on the pages, people visited through search, or through, map systems and things like that, visited your page, downloaded the coupon, and then tie that back to actually sales. That's kind of the online to offline conversion, or holy grail of marketing that we all should be measuring against. And like I said, it can be as simple as, creating a unique coupon just for the local space. Another thing I kind of touched on is, when you push out the initial launch of this, maybe 30 days or 2 weeks before the actual event comes around, is making sure that you're tracking that throughout the process. If you're sending out email campaigns, you can look at bounce rates or, engagement rates and things like that to maybe adjust the messaging. Make sure that, when people are interacting, how can you optimize it during the campaign itself, so that you can capture more, get more conversions at the end of it. And like I said, it's just utilizing reporting to your benefit, because that's really without reporting, without analytics, you could just be doing your office space filing of reports, instead of really knowing what sticks and what's actually providing the true value to that end consumer. So that's really the foundation of it. I kind of want to turn this over now, as we have Carlos on the phone from Hallmark, and I think will be a great example of really how a brand is unique, and as a brand focused as far as messaging and stuff like that goes, and their depth. So a couple thousand stores where really each market is different, and each one is really providing a different message or a different way to reach their consumers at their local level. So Carlos, I'll turn it over to you.
Tyler, thanks. I really appreciate great setup, and Greg as well. Very much appreciate kind of that high level context. So kind of for all the listeners there, to give you a sense of Hallmark and my role in our approach. The team that I lead is responsible for kind of the delivery of capabilities and programs and expertise in support of our network of Gold Crown retailers, in order for them to drive acquisition and retention, and that at a high level. is something that's very important to us on every day that we come to work here. So in terms of the first slide, go ahead and go to the first slide, Tyler. I wanted to kind of set up for everybody as a network. What makes us really unique in terms of a network, to be quite honest, is a little bit of a challenge when we start talking about how do we engage consumers, all of the emerging channels and traditional media that Tyler kind of addressed at a high level. So we have 2,000 rooftops, and these are the individual Gold Crown stores that probably many of the listeners are familiar with, and they are freestanding, they're in malls, and they're in strip centers. And of the 2,000 rooftops, about 3/4 of them, 75%, are actually independent business owners. They are fully responsible for the stores that they manage. When you look at these owners, we have a wide variety of dynamics as well. So we've got single owners that may own 50, 60, 70 stores. And then we've got another dimension of owners that owns 1 or 2 stores. And the reason why I call that out is when you talk about engaging the consumers and when you talk about emerging channels of engagement, digital, and when you talk about traditional media, when you talk about the owners that have 50, 60, 70 stores, most likely on staff they have a marketing manager who really understands that space and understands how to move the needle in terms of acquisition and retention within their channel. But when you're talking about retailers that have 1 or 2 stores, the story that I like to tell all the time is they come in that morning, right? And the order is coming in from FedEx, so they have to unpack that in their storeroom, and a store associate has called in sick. There's a toilet that's been backed up in their store. There's 6 inches of snow that came, or a huge rainstorm, and oh, by the way, you need to do some marketing today. And their ability, their appetite, their savviness, their understanding of the space and how to manage it can sometimes add to some complexity. And kind of the third dimension there is market variability. And again, many of the listeners are probably familiar with our channel, and some of you are familiar with the fact that in your city there may be 4, 5, 10 Hallmark Gold Crown stores. And they may be suburban, they may be urban, they may be the single store in the market. There's significant product mix. So you have some stores that have significant amount of Hallmark product, but many of them are also curating product in their local marketplaces. So they're really tapping into the makers movement. And how do they share that story? How do they broadcast the fact that they're really, that they've tapped into a local confections maker, or they've tapped into somebody who's doing really good fragrance through candles and soaps and lotions? And how do they tap into that and share that story? So in the next slide, one of the very first things that we had to do as Hallmark is understand, as a national marketer and a brand, what is the difference between what we're doing nationally and how we're managing our message and what we want to enable our local retailers to do, and again, an independent network of retailers. So we first established kind of the definition that you see on screen here, that national is responsible for the strength and the relevance of the brand and showcasing Gold Crown as the best place to realize that as a consumer. Conversely, what's happening in local marketing, it's really about increasing loyalty, creating a relationship between the store and the consumer and their products, and creating that relationship, whether it is through search, whether it is through an email, or whether it's through a birthday card that the store may be sending to its top valued customers. And it's also about reaching new customers, so it's engaging consumers that are loyal to the store, but certainly an acquisition play. And I shared that with you at the very beginning, that we're creating tools and capabilities and solutions to drive acquisition and retention. And then finally, to give stores credit for the marketing that they do. So on to the next slide. One of the things that we talk about when we're talking particularly about retention, let me back up here. The way that Hallmark has established this capability or this series of solutions is we've actually branded an approach, and we call it RCM, or Retailer Customized Marketing. Many of you may be familiar with solutions called an ad builder or a marketing builder. They're dynamic platforms, content creation, that users are able to engage with and actually create their content. So again, RCM is proprietary to who we are, it's custom built, and it's an easy-to-use online web-based platform that's really integrated into our CRM system, integrated into billing, and integrated into execution and deployment. So retailers are able to select from a templated offering and actually deploy an email to their top value consumers through the platform. And again, RCM is our version of that, but please understand, since we have an independent network, RCM is not required of our retailers. Many of you may be familiar about the ecosystem out there in the local marketing services space, about folks like MailChimp, like Vistaprint, like Constant Contact, and many of our retailers are actually using their services as well to augment what they can have available from us. So again, the dimension of RCM, and go to the next slide, Tyler, is really about all of the different dimensions that we support, all of the different channels. So we're certainly delivering email, we're doing social, we're providing support in search, we're providing support in store. In store could be videos that they have available, it could be signage, it could be coupons and bag stuffers. We're providing support in landing pages, and we're also providing support in a variety of direct mail functions. So the ability to send invitations customized from the store through a list that they purchase or a list provided through the system to engage their customers. But what's interesting that I want to call out is, in this space, what do we own in trying to manage and have a handle on brand, and what do we let our retailers kind of really influence? So really a clearest example that I can give is when we talk about search and we talk about claiming listings. So what we've done is we've said on behalf of our independent retailers, you know what, we're going to own your listing. We're going to claim your listing, whether it's in Google, whether it's in Yelp, or whether it's in a broad variety of IYPs out there. We're going to claim that listing because we want to ensure from a brand perspective that your store name, your phone number, your locations are consistent, and when consumers find you, they have a good experience. I'm going to contrast that with how Hallmark approaches social from a local perspective. So while we control the address and content from a search, we give retailers great freedom and great discretion to set up their own social presence. So when you find Hallmark on Facebook, on Twitter, on Instagram, it's a brand presence. And then we manage that here corporately. But when you're finding a local presence for any one of those spaces, the retailer is fully in control of that, responsible for the content they're featuring, the engagement, the conversation, the follow-up, all of the analytics that may be involved. They have full control over that. Tyler, go ahead and go to the next slide. So one of the key elements that we're trying to do here as an organization is we look at two dimensions. We look at prospecting or acquisition, and we look at retention. So from a retention perspective, our company has a really rich history, and in that really rich history, we have actually one of the oldest customer loyalty programs around. And our Crown Rewards program, which many of you may be familiar with, some of you may actually be engaged in the program, has about 10 million active consumers. And we make those consumers available through the platform to our retailers to engage. And it's really, really rich CRM data. So imagine a platform, and I'll use Tyler's example about Mother's Day. Imagine a platform where retailers can go in and they can identify the consumers that shopped Mother's Day last year and send them some sort of an engagement this year, whether it's a coupon, an email, a greeting card, whatever the case. And we can look at shopping behaviors. We can look at consumers that shopped greeting card category or keepsake ornaments, or even by a dollar value. So that is one very important dimension about our platform. The next slide captures really the branded content, and that's also been one of the challenges that we have as an organization. How do you create and establish a branded presence, whether it's through search, whether it's through email, whether it's through traditional print media? Give retailers the possibility to deliver the unique message that they have, but at the same time, have kind of a branded solution there where you might see the purple, where you might see the Hallmark Gold Crown logo, but literally allow a retailer to elevate the message from there and go back to the statement that I made earlier in the presentation, allow a retailer to leverage the message of the local candle maker and allow them to do it in a very personal and direct way, but within a branded framework that we can help control and provide some direction to. The next slide is about this dimension of customer acquisition. So in addition to the Crown Rewards program, which is integrated within the platform, retailers can also purchase outside lists. And we have a couple of dimensions and ways that we do that. We provide them a starting point for African American, Hispanic lists. We even have a profile that we've been able to identify where the consumer looks like a Crown Rewards member, but is not part of that program. So it meets the age requirements, it meets the gender requirements, it meets the income and home requirements. And that way a retailer can even grow their business outside of those consumers that they're actively seeing shop their store. The next slide is about marketing expertise. And this is really a very, very important component in our ecosystem known as RCM. And if you remember when I set up the conversation this afternoon, I said that the team that I lead is responsible for capabilities, programs, and expertise. When we originally developed the platform in 2007, we kind of took the premise of you build it and they will come. But what we quickly learned about our retailers, and again, it speaks back to the dynamic and diversity of our retailers and their skill sets and their appetite for marketing, their appetite for operations, their appetite for technology, we needed to create a system to provide instruction on the role and the value of marketing. So we have a call center which is out there actively engaging our retailers every day of the week. Some services that they provide is actually direct outreach, where they will actually reach out to retailers and say, hey, there's a great holiday greeting card program that you need to be engaged in and you need to be sending to your high-valued consumers. Let me tell you about that. Let me tell you about the fact that I went out onto your social page and I saw a conversation that you were having. Let me give you a perspective on how you might want to answer and engage that consumer to turn that complaint or concern into a positive relationship. Let me tell you about how we can go out into SEO, into Yelp specifically, and how we should probably update your store hours so your consumers, when they're finding you in that key search provider, they're having a very good relationship because they're finding up-to-date information with you. And then we flip that where retailers are actually calling us and saying, I'm getting ready to do Mother's Day marketing. What should I be thinking about? Going back to Tyler's slide of stepping out and stepping back 30, 60, 90 days, helping retailers at that point understand what that drumbeat needs to look like. What does that cadence need to look like in terms of communication and engagement? So then the next slide is actually a sample I pulled earlier this week. And I think it really kind of speaks to, it's an email, and it speaks to kind of that localness, but the localness that we're able to provide within a branded solution. So this is actually an email that one of our retailers executed within the last week or so. And it's about this really unique event about making Mondays magnificent and a special discount that they're providing only on Mondays in their store. So it's within a branded solution. Retailer doesn't have to worry about where am I going to find a logo. Retailer doesn't have to worry about imprinting their store name at the bottom. Retailer doesn't have to worry about how do I capture opt-ins or actually opt-outs in this case and give retailers a good experience when they receive an email. And how do I even begin to lay out the email template? And this conversation, this dynamic again is the same whether we're dealing with store hours, whether we're dealing with the brand new initiative of retailer landing pages off of our store locator, where retailers are given a tremendous amount of real estate to influence the information that they're making available to their retailers, but it's within a templated environment. So they've got a sense of what that foundation, what that space looks like, based on what? Based on industry best practice and what Hallmark understands about its channel and its consumers. So then the next slide is really kind of a recap of many of the elements that I touched on, which is about creating capabilities as a major brand, marketing and providing capabilities on behalf of small retailers that drive traffic and dollars. And I'll have to tell you that the Retailer Customized Marketing Program, even though our retailers aren't required to use our solution, it in and of itself clearly drives a significant amount of traffic to our independent retailers. And those retailers are shopping in our stores. Many of the trips that those consumers are making, depending on the engagement device, are making incremental purchases. And Hallmark creating presence in spaces like Yelp, which has a strong role in the space of acquisition. And again, Hallmark taking the leadership role in providing the name, phone number, and address, but a retailer coming into that space and updating their store photo, talking a little bit about the promotions that they may be doing or their unique product that they offer, clearly are continuing to close that loop and drive dollars to their store. Again, one of the challenges that we have and that many brands need to look at is the management of your brand and understanding what role you have and where what we call here at Hallmark, the brand police come in and where they take control and what you could and could not be responsible for and what role you give your retailers. And then, of course, finally, the ability for you to extend your marketing budget. The platform is built such that for every contact that a retailer pushes out, they're responsible for that cost. So Hallmark Marketing, Hallmark brand, is able to extend its dollar reach, extend its footprint in creating a capability for retailers to engage their consumers. But it puts the responsibility of that financial burden of the cost of the email, the cost of the greeting card, the liability of the offer on the retailer. And that was pretty quick because actually that whole story is about 9 years in the making for Hallmark, and we distilled it down to about 20, 25 minutes. But hopefully this gives you a good sense in terms of how Greg set the space up. Tyler did a deeper dive on broader things that we need to think about, and then Hallmark is providing its specific point of view on how it's managing on behalf of a national brand what's happening locally.
Based on everything we talked about, there's, different ways. Hallmark is very advanced of, the platforms and their custom, solution that they had to really, make marketing easy and enable the, local franchise owners, store owners, and, things like that. So this is just some recap that will be available, after the presentation of, really how you can really build that local marketing campaign push.
Thanks, everybody, for listening. And stay tuned for more LSA webinars. So thank you both, and thank you, folks, for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you.